Welcome to my channel, shavers and shavettes. I hope you're all well. Just have a little bit of a rambly, perhaps ranty type of video today, not really specific to the gear involved, but as always, we will take a look at that first. Brush today, just one of West Coast Shaving's house brand synthetic brushes. Not the biggest fan of synthetic, but I'm finding a few that aren't too bad, so working towards a video about those. Soap today from Bull Goose Shaving. It's their X or 10 limited edition. No longer available, but it is made by Cold River Soapworks using their Glide formula. And just got this razor in the other day, the Italian Barber Wunderbar slant razor. Today I have paired that up with the titanium handle. This one I think is 100 millimeters, while the rest of the line I think is around 80 to 85, unless I'm wrong, in which case it is a different number of millimeters. But with that one, again, once I've used it several more times and get a good grasp on the ins and outs of the razors, I do plan to make a video with that as well. And before we go too much further, I will say I am testing out a few different things for both the video and the audio. It's always a good idea when you want to test some different things to see what happens to the results. You should probably change like 8 or 9 variables all at once. Always ends up saving time in the long run. What I decided to talk about today, though, is something that's bothered me for a long time, not just in wet shaving, but just in general. It's frustrating because the question is very valid. It is a great question for people just brand new getting into wet shaving to be asking. The answers, though, can be misinformative at the best, and worst case scenario can really prevent people from fully being able to enjoy the hobby. The question is, what is the best product, whether that's a brush, a soap, a cream, whatever it happens to be? What is the best product for a demographic, whether that is straight razor users, people who say they have coarse beards, thin beards, even when it comes down to something like men or women. The answers that we'll get 100% of the time are other people in that demographic, their preference. There is no best product, whether it's a brush, a soap, or a razor. There is no best product for any demographic. One of the most common questions that falls into this category is, what is the best brush for a hard soap, or what is the best brush for a cream? This really is a great example of why I'm going to say it's impossible to pick a best product for any demographic. When it comes to brushes, we think of the most obvious variable is, what is it made of? Is it badger hair? Is it boar bristle? Is it a synthetic fiber? Is it horsehair? Those are very upfront and obvious. They are in the product description when we go to make a purchase. Now, each of those fibers, each of those hairs, does have different qualities. None of the qualities inherently make it better for a cream or a soap or anything else. With brushes, we're also looking at other variables that we sometimes get the information for and sometimes don't. Things that will change the way a brush performs is how long the hair is, how densely packed the knot is, what is the diameter of the knot. All of those things are going to make a slight impact from one brush to the next. If I take one brush from the same manufacturer, using the same hair or the same fiber, but they've made it a much larger knot, that brush is going to behave different compared to the brush with a smaller knot. Again, those differences aren't going to make it specific to need to be used with a cream instead of a hard soap or the other way around. It's just going to be the difference in the behavior. When we're talking about making lather on brushes, one of the most difficult variables to have to deal with is water quality. My water quality is going to be different from your water quality. That does have probably the biggest impact on making a lather, whether it's from a soap or a cream. Some people like to use bottled distilled water. That's fine. If you have hard water to the point where you cannot make a lather, that is a great option to be able to enjoy the hobby. Moving away from brushes, I also see a lot of questions when it comes to cream or soap, specifically when it comes to those wanting to try a straight razor. Do I need to use a soap or a cream with straight razor? What soap is best with straight razor? Any of those questions, the best answer is always going to come down to use the soap you prefer. Use the cream you prefer. If you like creams over soaps, with your double-edge razor, you are going to like creams over soaps for a straight edge. It's not going to have that big of an impact. As long as you are making a quality lather, your choice of blade or razor doesn't change the quality of that lather. The number one factor with any of these choices, it's going to come down to, do you like the product? I've said it before on the channel, everything in wet shaving comes down to our subjective opinion on the matter. Whether it's hard soaps, creams, what scent of those hard soaps or creams, is it double edge, straight razor, single edge? It's all subjective. Even the things that we can objectively measure, and I use blade sharpness as probably the ultimate example of this, if not the only example of this. We can objectively measure how sharp a blade is. There's been a few people do this with several different blades. Pretty interesting stuff. Very cool to find out. Look at the actual numbers and say, does the way it feel to me, does that match the actual sharpness? At the end of the day, though, in the real world, it doesn't have an impact. The sharpest razor is not the one that everyone loves. The dullest blade is not the one that everyone hates. It all comes down to our opinion, whether or not we like that product, whether or not we use that product. So with all of this, what does it come down to? Why does it matter? And I said earlier, sometimes the answers that are given, it's just plain old misinformation, or more often than not, opinion stated as fact. Where's the impact? And for me, when I see questions like this being answered as a matter of fact, that's when I get concerned about it. And like I said at the beginning, this can have an impact on how much enjoyment somebody gets out of wet shaving. If the question is, hey, I want to use a straight razor, should I use soap or cream? And somebody comes along and says, oh, only use a soap with a straight razor, but once you buy that soap, you can only use a bore brush with that soap. That's going to set that person up to most likely only experiment with hard soaps, only experiment with bore brushes. We're preventing them from buying that cream that they wanted, hoping that it would be good for a straight razor. They wanted somebody to say, hey, you know what? A synthetic brush is the best brush to use with a straight razor. We're stopping them from exploring. And when it comes down to it, that's the only way that we know what product we like. We might have a favorite reviewer, whether it's on YouTube or one of the forums, and we find that our taste often lines up with that reviewer. We go off of some of their recommendations. In the real world, though, there's no guarantee, and I think you probably already know that if you're watching my channel. But there's no promise that you will like anything. There's no promise that you will dislike anything. The only way to know is to try it yourself. Any answer that we give somebody brand new to the hobby or somebody brand new to a specific part of the hobby, if we give them an answer that limits their options, there's a real risk that we are preventing them from finding products that they would truly like to use. Again, I think worst case scenario, it might chase somebody away from the hobby. that person that wanted to experiment with hard soaps, but a bunch of people told them you have to use Boar, they might have decided, geez, I've used a couple of Boar brushes and I really didn't like them, so if I have to use a Boar with a hard soap, I'm not even going to try it. And since I have to use a hard soap to try a straight razor, you know what? I'm done. I'm just going to stick with my cartridges. So what do we do about this? For a very long time, I have tried to be very mindful of my answers and my opinion to people. I may have slipped. I might continue to slip. If anybody catches me slipping on this, please feel free to call me out. I make sure to present my opinion as my opinion. This is what I like to use. You may or may not like to use that as well. Be mindful, be conscious of your answers, especially with brand new wet shavers. Absolutely share your opinion, making sure that it's being shared in a way that presents it as your opinion, and encourage that person to try other things. Try other soaps, other creams, other types of brushes. Experiment, try as much as you can to determine what it is you like. So if you're with me still through all of that, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to come watch a video with me and listening to all my ramblings. I really do appreciate it. And I hope you have a great day.